Hey, this is Russell, and I work at the video store, the place that we can all go to every week when it's movie night. On days like today, our interesting customers pop in to rent something, and we go through the films that they've loved across their life. All right, let's do it. Let's open up the shop.
Did you see that thing yesterday on the TV? It was ready, interesting!
Good morning.
Morning, Russ.
How you, my G-Force?
I am good, dude. How are you?
I'm good, man.
Nice.
I'm strong.
I'm damp.
I'm damp
Yeah.
too. Oh, God, this is such mizzy weather.
It has been pouring for like 2 days.
But you know what? We needed it.
Yeah, this is true.
Did we need it?
I think so.
I think so. When I owned a garden,
Yes.
I currently live in an apartment, but when I owned a garden, I appreciated the rain.
Yes.
I took great joy in turning off my sprinklers. Welcome to the video store. Thank you for popping in. We are really in movie weather
Yeah, definitely.
here in Johannesburg. And we've got ourselves a lovely video store with lots of movies.
Yep.
And we've got incredible customers.
Yes.
Really amazing people that come in to rent something, and we find them something to rent. Today on the show, we got John van der Reet.
Very cool.
I'm very excited about
Yeah.
this. John van der Reet is the best-selling author of the Spud series, which has gotten itself a new Spud book. In the whole story and saga of Spud, we are now 10 years later, where Spud is long since out of school,
Okay.
and he gets invited to his reunion.
Cool.
So this is Spud the Reunion, the book, and it's already a bestseller.
Nice.
And we had the opportunity to have him come and visit us. So I'm very excited about that because I've actually got a few personal touch points
Yes.
where over the years I've actually like kind of been in and around him and the Spud books and the movies, and so I'm excited to tell him about those.
Cool.
And I'm also curious to know what kind of films he enjoyed and has watched over his life. Because for those who are joining us for the first time here at the video store, we generally are just behind the counter, and it's us as the people who work here talking about the films and the series that we love. So after John's visit, myself and Graham are going to have a little chat.
Yes.
We're not going to talk too long. But generally, our whole episode is us talking about the movies we've watched in the last week. So please come back for that if you enjoy this and the idea and the video store and you're looking for something to watch. For all of those who are listening now who are here because of John,
Yes.
and you found us because of John, I've got a feeling that you're really going to love this chat because not only does a long-form podcast get into places and details and things that, you know, a small interview or a quick radio interview that it could never touch. So I'm excited to have this uninterrupted, what could be an hour-long, probably even more, conversation with this incredible creative person. But we also approach it from a very interesting perspective. We ask what movies these people have loved across their life. We've got a feeling that the films you've loved, and we've got the 3 or 4, we see where we go, but we've got the great loves of your life, which are the movies you've loved. And I'd love to see how they've informed John.
Definitely.
Because we seem to think that the movies you've loved have made you who you are.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into that in a moment. We've just had Valentine's weekend here.
Yes, we have.
We're not working at the video store. I myself, Russell, the owner of the Bioscope, which is an independent cinema here in Johannesburg. And we have a tradition of always screening True Romance here at the Bioscope, which is lovely. And so thank you for everyone who came to our sold-out screenings of that.
Nice.
But I would love to see whether any of our other customers are returning anything interesting and what they've watched. So after the chat with John, we'll see whether there's any returns, any customers coming in to return something. It's a nice little part of our show. You got some work to do, Graham, in the back?
Yeah, I'll keep myself busy somehow.
All right. Okay, I can see him approaching. Here is John van der Reet popping in to rent something. How's it?
Hello, Russell.
How are you?
I'm so good. I just love your spot here. I really
you.
do. I've just stumbled in, and it's fantastic. It's like something very different in Joburg.
Yes, that's kind of always been the idea, is that we realized with the cinema, what's now 15 years ago, that we needed something like this.
Yes.
And someone was going to probably make something,
Yes.
and it could be us.
And I'm so thrilled you've done it. And just like the whole environment here around your place, it just looks very different to Joburg. The built up, it's leafy. It's got a almost Cape Townian vibe.
100%. I often say that in Joburg, we love to look out over a parking lot. That's where we eat our eggs and do our morning meetings and look out over a beautiful parking lot.
That's right.
Where if it was Cape Town, it would be this beautiful sort of
the ocean
Cork
or
Bay or
something.
ocean.
Yeah.
But you're very much a Durban boy.
That's correct, yeah.
That's the home. That's where you're based.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When I was a younger actor, there was definitely this pressure of, are you going to go to Joburg? Get an agent, get on TV or try get on TV, get into the adverts, all that stuff, because there's a lot more going on here. But I think being a writer in my life, it just allowed me to write from wherever I was going to be. So actually, I could have still had my career living somewhere in the Karoo or in the Northern Cape or something. But ultimately, Durban has provided something. I don't know. It's a kind of connection point. Okay. I'm quite synonymous with it. The Midlands, Durban. I do enjoy it. And of course, Spud allowed me to buy a house with my royalties back then. So I still live in that house. And that sort of, I suppose, keeps me.
But of course, Spud is just so authentically you. And maybe you talk about this a lot, but I'd love to get a sense of, where you begin and when Spud begins. But, it has been so authentically you, with you having gone to Michael House, right?
Yes.
And sort of writing from what you know, and from this place of authenticity. And of course, that you sitting in your house in Durban helps, reinforce that authenticity.
Yes.
How did the reunion come about? Like, how did you feel like with Exit followed by a Bear, that was it? Did you always think there was going to be more? What brought about the reunion? What's now 10, 12 years later?
Good question. After Exit Pursued by a Bear, I then wrote the screenplay for Exit Pursued by a Bear. And that was about 2012, 2013. And then Troy Sivan pulled out.
Okay.
The film was greenlit, Cleese was on. It was all ready to shoot. And then he signed with EMI and became
this global superstar.
Pop star. And it was very clear from the start that EMI didn't see Spud as part of his image, his new image they were going to build.
Sure.
This androgynous pop star.
He's certainly been something for everyone.
Correct.
Certainly a queer icon.
Correct. And I think also as Spud went on, I think he found playing a straight guy chasing girls and mermaids and all the rest. I don't think he felt it was as he got older. But I think it was interesting. Just I know we're getting sidetracked here, but in the first film, that guy was we hung out a lot. He's a very good actor. I could see that even at 13, he wanted to plug into me, to understand me, like an actor would,
Yeah, good.
And we spent a lot of time together. He was so sweet. And then in 2, he came back with this bigger family group and brothers. And then by the time we got to Spud 3, he was like an entourage staying in another hotel with like an entourage of like 20 or 30 people. Yeah. And like they would kind of come in and he would shoot and then they'd all leave. And he wasn't like connecting with the Crazy Eight as much. It suddenly he already was on that road to becoming a pop star. But getting back to your question, I think I'd been on the roller coaster since 2003 to late 2002 when I started writing Spud, all the way to 2013 when I finished this 4th script that never actually got made. And I think I just felt like I'd been on that roller coaster a lot, and it was almost like the line between myself and Spud had just disappeared.
Yeah.
It did feel like I couldn't go anywhere, just Spud. But also there was a sense that I had finished exploring his high school years, so I definitely felt like that was it.
Yeah.
And I did make an announcement somewhere that was going to be it.
Even if that announcement is just to yourself. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And part of that too was I didn't enjoy the Adrian Mole novels when he came back. Not that he's very similar to Spud, but there's a stylistic similarity. They're very different styles of novel. But I didn't like this idea of sort of returning as an older person where you start to sound a little more tragic. But anyway, I think a lot of it was I was just tired of Spud. It has just been wall to wall, but I loved it. And then I went off and I did my own thing. I did a lot of theatre and I started working on projects, but not just projects that were potentially successful, more just creative interest projects.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I had that pressure to create something big straight after it. So I enjoyed that. I went back to theatre, I did some acting, but I think by about 2020, by the time COVID struck, I'd clicked that Spud was much bigger than me. And I think there was an arrogance in me that felt like I was the Spud creator, and now I could just close those curtains, and then down the line I'll open up something else. But what I realized is wherever I went, for year after year after year, somebody would say, "Hey, you mind if I ask you a question? Are you the guy who wrote Spud?" And then it could be at a wedding, it could be, and then suddenly it would be, after being anonymous to, and I just realized the Spud thing was much larger than just entertaining novels that people laughed at and empathized with. It's sort of really connected into the essay, historical zeitgeist, people's lives, their own school days, their, whatever it is, their families. And so during COVID, I started to think about and I started to think about, what about a 20-year anniversary reunion book? That was my first idea.
To go 20 years.
So what I mean, I meant 20 years after the first publication, 2005. So it'll be 25. So I was thinking about bringing it back, and I always knew it was going to be a 10-year reunion. I liked the fact that I'd been away sort of 10 years. Spud had been away 10 years. It all just had this.
Lovely.
And then I loved the idea that they hadn't been in contact, the Crazy Eights, so that was going to be like a coming back and rediscovering. But
what's nice is that your device is to root it in the school, and it's a great excuse.
Yes.
As opposed to him bumbling away as an adult, or sort of, as you said, being that Adrian Mole that now isn't the same. You've got this excuse to go back to the school.
Correct. And I felt, in a way, what I wanted to do was more than just one book. I felt like if I was going to do all this work, finding Spud and all these guys in their 20s, I wanted another series, even if it was just 2 books. I didn't feel like I wanted this to be a one-off.
Okay.
So when I came back, but obviously I was never going to announce that, because if the reunion didn't do well, there was never going to be another book, of course. And so there was always this hanging over your head that I could never speak about it. But honestly, that era, 2002 to 2005, was just a radical shift in my life. And so what I'm trying to do is take Spud back there to mine some very interesting times, not only the creation of Spud, but breaking through theatrically. Ben and I went to Thailand in 2004 and got smacked by the tsunami while we were trying to write our Black Mamba. So all these things.
I want to get into all of this, by the way, and I want to talk about Black Mamba. And there's actually a bunch of really interesting touch points where you and I crossed, and I don't even know whether you know this.
No,
and so I want to get into it. Okay, but I know that a big part of it is your Black Mamba shows and your performances with Ben.
We were doing, yes, we started with Green, then we went Black, and it was just literally from 2002 to the end of 2006, 5 years, we were just on the road all the time, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was incredible as a comedian, comedic person, to be able to do those shows at night and to be writing Spud 1 during the day, and having allowing the timing, the sense of comedic edge to.
It's such a muscle. I play in a band, and which you'll find out now when I give you these touch points. But I've realized that writing is for the most part, whether you're writing a song or a novel, it's a muscle that you've got to exercise.
Yes,
it's you can't just get out and just run a marathon. It's like you've got to warm your body
That's
up.
it.
And you got to train.
You got to train.
And it's amazing how much you throw aside. And then when you are at your optimal fitness, you're making your best work.
You are. But
so it makes sense that Spud came out of the Green Mamba
It
show.
does.
Yeah.
And also preceding that, years of struggle where I'd finished my master's. I know where to hide as an actor. You know, when you're a student and doing work, it's actually very nice because you've got a master's, you're doing your thesis, but you're doing performing here and there.
Yeah.
There's not that pressure. When you suddenly don't have that anymore and you've got to pay your rent and you've got to, there's also in a small place like Durban, I say relatively small,
Sure.
you can get up to quite a big pond, fish in the pond quite quickly, say in theatre in Durban, but then you hit the wall because there's not the next step to go. You can't now go into films and TV. And so there was an element that I, like Spud in this reunion, sort of went through a one-third life crisis, a kind of like crisis of confidence. Is my career actually a career, or am I just fooling myself because I'm passionate about it? You know?
So I think let's talk about the Mamba shows because that was my first introduction to you. Around that time, I was at university doing my what then became the film degree at Wits, and we would go to Grahamstown, and you were unquestionably the highlights whenever there was a green or a black Mamba show on. It was you and Ben Foss, and you would do these like skits, right? It would be like 4 or 5 sort of odd skits in a show where you'd play different characters. I remember the one was Derek Watts, who had his surname changed to something that sounds similar, which is very, very funny, and it was just great. I loved the fact that now, just to set it up, Spud the reunion for someone, is we find Spud now 10 years out of school, kind of being you, starting this career as a theatre performer and wanting to write these skits.
That's it.
And instead of being Mamba, you call it Viper.
That's right. Yes.
And you referenced the one skit, which I'll never forget, which was when you were pretending to be cricket commentators commentating a famous South African battle.
That's right.
Isandlwana,
yes.
And I just loved that. And the moment you were talking about it in the book, saying that this was your idea and you wanted to do this skit, I immediately remembered sitting in Grahamstown watching that skit. And it was like, you guys sort of had your pith helmets on.
That's right, yes.
Whether you actually did or not, it was in my imagination.
No, we did.
You had them on.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, here's another little fellow, and this little fellow is doing this.
Yes, right. Short leg, he gets his leg shot off, and then here comes the can. But it was incredible, the creating of that, because we just did what made us laugh, but also there was a lot of craft and skill.
100%. I mean, comedy, it needs to be smart.
It was written smartly,
and it was written, and we
written.
You could tell immediately that you guys weren't fools. That you certainly tapped into what made, Derek Watts funny as a commentator and as a sort of South African
legend and so
legend.
forth.
And so you certainly honored him and were able to make fun of him at the same time.
I know. He actually accosted me once. We were when we were filming Spud at Michael House, and Carte Blanche came to do an interview with the main people and John Cleese. And we did that walk of his, where what a lovely man. But we did that, that walk and talk that he likes doing, where the camera pans across and you see you walking down.
It must have been a full circle moment to be filmed by him doing it.
It was. But then also he goes, John, now we're going to do the walk and talk. Don't worry about the talking. The camera will just make it look like we're doing a walk and talk. Let's just go for a walk and look around at our surroundings. Yeah. So, that kind of...
Such a well-oiled machine.
And then he goes, I believe you had me in your show, and kind of like... But he said he didn't see it, but he'd heard a lot about this. But yes, it was just wonderful. We went to Grahamstown. That's where we premiered. Literally... We got there, we had about 50 tickets sold for 8 shows for our debut there. And Ben and I went to, I don't know if you remember, Sundowners. You'd have the concert up at the reunion. Like, everybody had like a slot. You'd get onto the slot, and it was a free concert for people. They'd all just sit there at 5 o'clock and watch different
cool.
shows doing a taste of something.
Oh, lovely. Like little
and
previews.
A preview
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
almost entice people. And we didn't have a lot of people there booked already. And we got up there and it was packed. It was like a couple of thousand people maybe.
Yeah.
And they just booed off the act before us, which
Oh,
was,
shit.
which is a bit dodgy, right?
Yeah.
And we get up there and we do the horse race. Into our mics, we put our horse racing things, and that thing just goes.
What was the horse race?
It was the
again?
disgrace stakes with all the disgraced leaders, Robert Mugabe running this and this guy running this. And
you commentated like
we
a horse
commentated
race.
like a
Yes.
horse
Okay,
race.
I remember
and,
that, yeah.
But, full of witty and puns and all the rest. And we decided to do that because it was the most sort of verbal sketch.
But it's the perfect platform to advertise your show because
Correct. And
how do you pick a part of a long form thing?
Exactly. So, and we did it, and it just the Oaks just screamed, and
Yeah.
and suddenly
All
that
the
night
tickets
it just
booked,
the tickets went,
Lovely.
and we sold out. We did extra shows, and then we just kept coming back every year, and it was like a sellout every year. We became an institution down there.
No, you very
was-
much were, and so you can imagine for someone hearing this now and hearing about this sort of skits and this love of sharp, witty comedy, that imagine telling that guy, John, now that the tickets have sold out and you're going to have this good run at Grahamstown, that you're going to produce work that's going to have John Cleese star in it.
No, that.
I mean, he had to have been a sort of a godlike figure for you.
godlike
Right?
godlike figure. Ben and I, as sketch people, we watched a lot of sketch, and we did it almost as research to know what's out there. Ironically, we were probably more similar to the two Ronnies than Monty Python
Sure.
in terms of the content, but and the wit and stuff like that. But man, I mean, we also, we grew up, we had limited TV here. So
Yeah.
things like Faulty Towers, sometimes you'd get Monty Python, but Faulty Towers is always on. He became a legend in South Africa. I think almost recognized as one of the funniest men in the world.
Sure.
Just through that era, and I think in Britain too. And if you'd told me that I would actually one day meet that guy,
It's one thing just to meet,
yeah,
but the other thing is to
be in
have him say your words.
I have him say my words, play a character inspired by teachers that I was there with, and also just the sense of being able to ultimately hang with him
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
over like 3 films, particularly in that third film when I wrote the screenplay, and we just spent weekends together. We were on the plane together. I'd go hang at the Oyster Box with him, and he just actually really enjoyed my company, and I loved his company. So it was just lovely, and what a man, what a brilliant man.
How did that come about? Just good agents that were able to get the right timing?
Well, there's an agency in the UK, quite famous agency, that gets stars for you. But the idea is you pay them and they give you 3 months. And literally, because they can't go, well, if you give me a rubbish script, I can't make a big star come, but I have access to their agents and so forth. So we went on such a search for the Gov. First of all, we heard Cleese was retired, living in California and not working anymore. And at that time...
Was he your first pick, ideally?
Well, he certainly came up, I think, right at the front. But it was an interesting pick because he wasn't doing film at the time. It was almost like a bit of a left field pick. But all of us would have said, geez, he'd be brilliant. But Ross said, no, I don't think so. The guy's not working. We're going to have to do a lot of work. And that was the feedback we got from these agents in London. Cleese was actually going through a divorce at that time where he got skinned, and I'm sure you've all heard. And
that's right.
then
He needed
to work.
some money, yeah. What good timing.
So perfect timing. But anyway, we started, ironically, with Hugh Grant.
Okay.
The script went to Hugh Grant, who gave it the big middle finger, right?
God. Yeah, okay.
Then it went to Bill Nighy,
All right.
who thought about it and then said no. Then it went to Stephen Fry, who actually I thought was he was sort of on the loop for a little while, then said no. Think maybe politically incorrect, maybe that kind of thing. I don't know.
You sure?
And then we had one more left in our 3 months. And then
so the guys say, I can give you 3 months of trying to pitch to whoever
you
I
pay
can.
them like $20,000, and then they will say, that gives you 3 months, and we will pitch to as many people as we can. When that's gone, your 20,000's gone. So that's how you get these guys have got the access to these big boys. So our last shot was Cleese, and I just finished the third Spud book, Learning to Fly, and what I tended to do, because I was exhausted after like a year and a half of working, I would hand it in, and my publishers would then take it through the stages before going to publishing it. And Jules, my wife, and I would go overseas backpacking for like 2 months, just straight away, just to almost
Unplug
super, and loved it. And also it felt like a creative refueling. And I was, we had got to Kuala Lumpur, we were on our way to Thailand, and I went in those days you had internet cafes, right?
Yeah,
sure. We didn't have smartphones and things, so and I popped into an internet cafe, and I got the news that John Cleese loved the script, and this is looking great, and I was like, I couldn't like sleep for a day, and then 2 days later, Cleese had signed, and it was just incredible. And then he came out for all of them, and loved coming out. Really enjoyed the team.
Yeah, and I think you also, as you said, you caught him at the right point in his career, where maybe he did need to do some work to pay some bills, but it was more just like, you sort of had his time. He was available.
Yes. And also the other thing with Cleese, I think he had been to those kind of schools. He had a real sense of the gov, straight up. Yeah. But when I wrote it, there was elements of Cleese in that gov anyway. You know what I mean? So it was almost like it was set up for him to play. But the another thing with Cleese, he doesn't like old people. He hates old people. So he likes young people. He loves the energy of young people. And I got that sense from the Spud. He loved everybody, the producers, everybody was in their 40s and 30s and 40s.
Sort of the opposite of an old soul, a young soul,
And they gave him this old driver at the start, and he fired him after one day, and then he ended up with this dude who could speak Mandarin, he was like this big hair and kind of like a real funky dude, and he loved that guy. And so he did. He just a hugely entertaining man, but a very, very clever man. I told him that I loved this absurdist playwright, and he also enjoyed this playwright, and he said he had been to this guy's premiere. And
who was the playwright?
I'm trying to think now. It's the whole N.F. Simpson. N.F. Simpson, very avant-garde but English playwright, and he loved N.F. Simpson, and I said N.F. Simpson, but I mentioned it, and his eyes grew like that.
Those are probably those points where you connected, where you
we
sort
did.
of grew, a little bridge sort of formed.
Correct.
And the friendship started.
And then the next year he came back, or 2 years for the next film, and he brought me N.F. Simpson's play, The Whole, signed by the author and also signed by John Cleese. And I think that is the most valuable book I have on my bookshelf. Like if I've got a fire, I'm running with that N.F. Simpson play, rather than my Spuds or original kind of things. Yeah.
Sure. Well, we've found ourselves a bestseller now with Reunion.
Yeah.
What is the economics of a bestseller? What does that mean in South Africa?
The economics have changed completely in the book industry. To give you an idea, when I signed for Spud, when Spud 1 came out, it was selling for 95 Rand a book. Okay. But now you must remember it's 5 Rand to the dollar back then.
Sure.
Now we are 18, 19, right? So it was 95 Rand a book. Like, so paperbacks would come out, you could pay $100, boom, you get your paperback and off you go. And it felt cheaper there. But I was earning about 6 Rand a book.
Yes.
For my royalties, right?
Yes.
So, but I sold, so for 6 Rand a book, you needed to sell it in the tens and hundreds of thousands. And nobody did that in South Africa, and Spud did that. Nowadays, you don't need to sell in the hundreds of thousands because the books are so much more expensive that you're getting say 30 Rand a book.
Yeah.
So for the same price, you almost can sell, say, 20,000 books. You would be getting the same for. Yeah. But what I'm saying is the Rand value has lost value too. But what has happened is that there's less sales in books than there used to be, less book buyers, but they make more money off each book.
Interesting. But what qualifies as a bestseller? Because it is a term, right? You got to sort of hit some kind of mark to be called that. And of course, it's different in every region. And
it is. And here we're in a non-fiction country, I've really felt that now so much more, maybe because Spud did so well, I didn't really notice it that much back then. But if you look at the top 10 selling books at any time of the year, generally here in South Africa, it'll be like 8 non-fiction and
it's
2
all about
fiction. And
politics.
it's politics, but also religion,
Yeah.
self-help, like Atomic
Yeah.
Habits. And it was interesting. Spud was number 1 through December.
It's a nice Christmas book.
Great. I can imagine everyone on a lilo or on the beach.
It's such easy reading,
Easy
but it's
reading.
but it's dense.
But it has a denseness. It's not just
Every line
yeah.
is a really well thought out comedic line, but it is light. Yeah,
Correct. And then the moment December ends, fiction just plummets, and suddenly Atomic Habits, which was number 12 or number 10, is number 1. And everybody starts to get into this. The new year, it's like, okay, Christmas is done. The fiction's going out the window. All the sort of, the stuff for me is out the window. Now it's about bettering myself, and it's faith books.
I mean, new me, new year, new me. Kind
and
of
you just
mentality.
see it like it's. And I didn't notice this before so much, but I've just noticed it's almost like a complete changing of the guard from the end of December after Christmas to now January, getting ourselves together. Self-help. You know what I mean?
Was the book more of an earner for you than the movies? Did the books bring you more personal wealth than the movies? Because the movies are perhaps a lot tougher and a lot more expensive to make.
Yes.
Or perhaps easier for you because it was did you get like a sort of fee for the movies?
Yes, so I got R1 million for the first Spud for the film rights, which was the most I got for any of the 4 movies. But that was a lot of money in 2010, right?
Sure.
And that's what got my house, right?
Yeah.
Up until then, I was doing well. But the thing with royalties is it takes a long time.
No, it's the same with music.
It's the same with music, right?
I remember someone just saying, you got to build the pipe, just wait, and it'll just trickle through. And
it does if it sells, right? If it doesn't sell, but you've got to wait a long time. So, for example, with the reunion, I get an advance, right? So when you sign a deal, you get an advance. That advance is taken off your royalties. So if I get, say, R250,000 advance to write the book over 18 months, okay, that's not a lot of money per month if you divide it out. It's more of a stipend as you go. Then you sell the book. You need 8,000 copies sold to cover your advance. So there was a real sense going into this after a long time. I might not even reach my advance, So the money I've been paid is already spent. I might actually get nothing for this going forward. But it was a great thrill that it did go through. It's smashed through the advance number.
Yeah.
But going back to your question earlier, traditionally a fiction bestseller in South Africa is 3,000 copies, but that's been revised down now. Now it's almost like 1.5.
Really? Yeah.
And you know what? They're finding it harder and harder for books to sell 1,000 copies in South Africa, like fiction books and books that you'd be surprised about.
Yeah. But how many copies was the first Spud in the end? Well, what do you think the first Spud's done in total?
The first Spud has probably done 350,000.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Worldwide too. I mean, it got published abroad in various places. But the bulk here, I'd say 80% here. But it was just incredible. It came out in September 2005. And I remember after a year, it had sold about 45,000. Okay. And then by the end of the second year, it had hit 100,000. So it just shows you that second year went almost faster than the first year because that's just that word of mouth that was just spreading. And we were just talking about outside with my publicist, Shakti, that almost when I released that book in 2005, there was no other book. There was Harry Potter, but there was no other South African book or fiction book that was even trying to do that. It was very much serious, James Coetzee, political, apartheid-based.
And listen, but we need the humor. We need that.
I know.
We need
humorous. I know.
And of course, South Africans love humor. We go to humor. It's surprising that there's not more Spuds out there, because we default to humor to make sense of our crazy lives.
That has been an astonishment for me.
But I guess perhaps that's all been taken up by the sort of Zapiros and the Madam and Eves. But you would have thought it would have been more in writing.
I will tell you this. Writing, hilarious. And at the same time, keeping it authentic
Yeah.
and soulful is bloody hard.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised.
I can
I'm not surprised. I have to work.
Yeah.
You would not believe the number of drafts I do
Yeah.
on Spuds, where I know people probably think that I just start and it comes out pretty
Oh,
close
yeah,
to what it's going to
sure.
be like.
Yeah.
And geez, I go everywhere. I experiment. I try things. I groove it. I'm almost like a guy with a plane on wood, continually planing and for a year and a half. And that's how you get that. It's the pacing, it's the timing. And I can see why people don't do this. Well, it's hard to, because it's kind of like fights the authenticity. Humor is like the enemy to drama and authenticity. It's much easier just writing Spud to go from point A to point B with no humor.
Yeah.
It's much easier and it's clearer.
No, totally. And I've said the same with film. You can sort of cheat your way through a drama as a first-time filmmaker. Do you know what I mean? Because we can all just say, "Oh, okay, well, this week."
And if you
we all got to
structure
be
it well,
serious, and let's be
yes.
serious about this. But to actually craft a comedy in South Africa that's genuinely funny, is, I think, a lot harder.
It's a lot harder. I promise you, to make somebody laugh in a book is incredibly hard. Not just chuckle or smile, but you have to put that book down and hose themselves. Now, it's so hard to do in film too, but the way you do it in film is actually more through character. That if you think, or TV or film, it's those characters that sort of sit out there that become hilarious. So,
No, sure.
Kramer from Seinfeld.
All he's got to do is just walk in the door.
Just walk in and slide in, and we all laugh because it's like we prep for it. I know that's television, but it's just a sense of it's like gold mining for comedy, and you can't go for that lower. I don't write that lower common denominator. Just trying to write. Don't do jokes.
Yeah.
I don't stand up and make jokes either. And so it's very much that collision of the wit, the comedy, the absurdity of the moment, and then the character. The characters drive that.
No, I mean, you can imagine the old senile Gran.
Yes.
Wombat.
Yes. It was very true. That was based on
close
my
our eyes
Gran.
and see Wombat. What was your 10-year reunion like? John's 10-year reunion, because I liked my 10-year reunion, and I thought 10 is definitely a perfect amount of time where you're just that much older. You're just starting to personally not care as much about what people thought. I was also lucky that I'd established some things, so I sort of arrived
Did
with a
you
little
have
bit of an accomplishment.
quite good friends that you had at school that you were going back to meet at the reunion?
Somewhat, yeah.
Or was it a little bit you wouldn't have called any of them your friends, more just like schoolmates from the old days?
I sort of was lucky enough to be sort of everyone's friend. I didn't
That's
really
nice.
Sort of
I can see you're a popular guy. You
Well,
just
no,
got
I didn't even
that.
think I was popular, but I just sort of, I sort of had a nice group. But what was it like for you?
Okay, well, I'm going to shock you. I never went to my 10-year reunion.
Okay.
I've never been to a reunion.
Okay.
But I wrote Spud the reunion.
Because he grapples with that, and at the start he's not going to go to the
Correct.
reunion. And was it for the same reasons that you didn't go?
Well, partly I was on stage at the theatre on the square that night doing Green Mamba because we were touring at that stage.
Okay.
But if I wasn't, I'm not sure I would have gone because I didn't go to my 20th and I wouldn't go to my 30th. My big problem was Spud's big problem. We were a wolf pack back then. We weren't mates. And I didn't carry on mates with guys from my dorm. And also we had quite a psycho house and dorm. Like I think people think some of the stuff is like
it actually wasn't fun PG-13 antics. It was actually a bit worse.
Yeah. After my Michael House launch for the reunion in November, I went off to Notty's pub. I was staying at Notty's, and there were a whole lot of old boys rocked up. But they were on some big poker tour or drinking golf tour or whatever, and they were at Notty's. And then they came over and chatted. And one oak was in the year above me. Yeah. Or 1 year above me in my house. So he wasn't in my dorm, but he was the next one up. And he was just, dude, that era, what we had in our house. Yeah. It was, and I've chatted to our former housemaster. And you must also realize I've got spies there. So I know exactly what went down at our 10-year reunion. So it's not just like I'm thumb-sucking here. I know there was a fight between two guys who were mates. Yeah. It went pear-shaped. But also, remember, these things are just drinking,
Yeah.
a massive drink. And that's what was actually, to go now get plastered for a whole weekend with guys that are sort of
Yeah.
old schoolmates, but that's about it. And have that whole like, oh, Ruit, and all that sort of banter and quite.
You can also only put up with it for so long.
I felt I'd done my job when I'd finished school. So, but also interestingly, the Crazy Eight, the guys have inspired those characters around. Very few of them would have come to that reunion because they were sort of outliers. They weren't like even a Rambo. He was a sort of like
The real life Rambo.
The real life Rambo. I'm actually in touch with more than anybody else from that year, and he's an interesting character, but he's not. I've pushed that Rambo character away, but I haven't seen that guy for 30 years. But we're in touch. He's quite a dark soul, and he always has been. But there's no ways he would go back to Michael House.
My dad went to DHS, so perhaps a bit more
School I know well,
a bit more, in the city.
Yes.
And he had his now 50th reunion, I want to say, something like that, 50. And he said these old men, are planning this weekend. And the one oak still brought up the fact that the other guy, he doesn't want to see him because that oak stole his sandwiches.
See,
50 years later, these oaks have been CEOs, or some of them are accomplished, but you are still this 16-year-old boy that says, "Fuck you! You stole my sandwiches. I don't like you." Interesting, and they'll never give it up. It explains why Trump is the way he is. He's just this little boy that wants to be on TV and impress his dad, who's long since dead.
Yeah,
interesting.
And you know what? I would be Ruit. That's what I was called at school, Ruit. At my first geography class, the teacher was going to
mispronounce your name.
Mispronounce van der Reet for van der Root. And then obviously everyone was like, Ruit. And then they discovered that Ruit in Australian is a naughty word, and that delighted them. So I became Ruit. And also I was a late developer, right? Okay. So that Ruit and all that's where I sort of, when I thought about it, I wanted to take that. But I would go back to these reunions, I would still be Ruit. And I would still have that lower, and I don't almost feel like
you don't need it. Yeah,
I don't need it. And I get Mike. It's weird. At school, I felt like I was rather dismissed or not really respected much. I was small and choir and drama. I did play cricket, but it wasn't enough to inspire any sort of real. And now I have all that there. It just changed overnight where I go there and it's like.
Do you think despite your success, you'd sort of still be the.
No, like it'd be different, but because they asked me to be like the guest speaker at the 20th. And there's just no ways Ruit would have been even considered as the top 50 oaks to ever speak at a reunion after leaving school. So there was a shift, and a lot of guys call me Spuddy now, and like I just feel very loved up there. But I didn't feel that at school. Do you think you would now
maybe do the 20th and do the speech?
I think I'm more open to it, but I still don't think so.
It's not an obvious question. Yeah. No, I mean, it's not an obvious answer.
It's just not my thing. Yeah. I think I might, if it was just going there for the night, and then coming home, I would do it. But to spend a whole weekend,
that's the other thing with my dad's reunion. He then didn't want to do the golf on the Sunday, despite being a guy that plays golf 3 times a week. He was just like, it's enough now. I now want to go home to my wife.
Yes,
it's enough, boys.
That's it.
Boys for this whole weekend.
And I don't think when boys talk about the old days, they're talking about the rugby and the first team. You remember this game?
I was never that guy.
And I was not that guy. So it's like nobody's going to be talking about Oliver in 1990, which is kind of what would be my highlight.
I was that dude. I sort of did the rugby because I sort of felt I had to.
Yeah.
And then I remember, I've said this before, actually, funny enough, on the show. I remember this rainy afternoon sort of being in a rugby game practice, not participating, sort of hanging back, and it raining. And me going, what am I doing on a rugby field? I was like, I play in a band. Yeah. Like, what the fuck? And I don't have a memory of rugby thereafter. I probably finished the season, but I was in the plays and I started in the band for the plays. But I play in this band, and I need to tell you this because I had established, and we'd had 1 or 2 songs on radio by the time we had the 10-year reunion. So it was quite nice to sort of go there. And
what was your band called?
So the band is called Short Straw.
I've heard of Short Straw.
We were on the soundtrack for Spud 3.
That's right.
So that's my one touch point.
That's
with
right.
You.
Yes.
Then
That's why I've heard of Short Straw.
no, but
because,
then, do you remember the launch of what I think was Exit Pursued by a Bear, where you were signing books in the middle of Santon City?
yes.
Do you remember
Yes.
the band that was playing behind you?
It was.
It was us.
Was it you?
It was us. Yeah.
No way.
So we got asked to play this launch,
And you played Night Swimming. I remember you played
And the-
at
and the
REM's
brief-
Night Swimming at some stage, didn't you? Was there like
No, the brief was to play like old South African stuff. So we did
okay.
like
I've got you.
Avoid.
Oh,
and-
yes. And a lot of those from the film were in the film too.
Yeah,
you
that
know?
was the idea, and I think we weaved in one or two of our own. But that was
yeah.
still very early days of Short Straw.
Yes, yeah.
But that was a nice touch point. Then I've got another one which was a little bit weird. When I was at varsity, I got roped in to try someone's attempt at a pilot show. And the show was going to be a reality TV show where student filmmakers would have to go out and make a film.
Yes.
And then we went out and I made this film. And I forget who was the guy that wrangled it together. He was a lovely dude, just trying to make this kind of proof of concept. It was during like a varsity holiday or near the end. And then we quickly shot this kind of studio set where the two filmmakers were to come and you were the host.
That's right.
I was one of the filmmakers.
No way.
So it's funny. Do you remember that? It was like
Yes.
maybe an afternoon of your time where you
I
quickly
remember.
sort of showed what could be this kind of reality TV show where filmmakers were having to make films.
That's right. And I think it was Rapid Blue who were doing it.
Yeah, just under a
and
production
they
company.
got hold of me and said, we are.
Would you mind?
And also they were saying, like, I think they were thinking about who, if it went on, like I might be the host.
Yeah, you were
know?
a great host. You were the perfect
well, thank you.
dude
Thank you.
for it.
But it's, yes.
It was just a pilot. We
yes.
just put it
and we
together.
shot in the
And
studio
I
that day.
I was one of the budding filmmakers.
Jeez, our paths have crossed
Our
a
paths
lot.
have crossed a few times, which
Wow,
is
isn't that
lovely.
amazing, hey? That is interesting.
Okay, but what we like to do here, and I'm now curious because we've spoken a lot about your life and these pockets of your life. I'm curious to know what films have come your way. So you started at Michael House from the beginning, right? Primary school, huh?
No, I was in Durban North for primary. I was just in
Okay.
a government primary school, like a local one. Yeah.
So we've got the Puppy Love film, which is the first film that kind of enters your life. This is you when you're very young, primary school, even younger. Do you have a film that you could think as sort of
yes,
setting you on your track? What's
yes. I think the first film, and good film. I'm not just talking about something that amused me or made me laugh. Was Arthur. Dudley Moore and
Okay.
John Gielgud. I think it
Okay.
was.
I
and
think
now,
I only ever saw the remake where Russell Brand was
yeah, no,
Arthur. which is
the
not
original was Oscar nominated. Gielgud won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, but it's a comedy.
Yeah, wealthy
millionaire,
Yeah.
drunk all the time, and his family want him to straighten his life out, but he's just almost like an untamed boy.
Okay.
Meets this, he's meant to marry this high society girl. Meets this waitress, Liza Minnelli, falls in love with her, and they don't want her to marry because she's working class, and he's guided by this butler, John Gielgud, who plays this, and it was just. I think for me, and I think about my life, and I think about Spud, and I go, gee, isn't that incredible? That was probably the first film, and it's a comedy, but it's a drama that is also poignant at times. It tells the story of love and loss, and in some ways is Bildungsroman, which is what they call Spud, the genre of Spud. Bildungsroman.
I've heard that in varsity. What is that again?
And
As a term?
it's basically a couple 100 years old German term, but it's about. It basically describes a genre of fiction where it's about one person's spiritual and personal adventures that basically
Yes.
changed his perception of himself and the world by the end of that story. And each Spud does that. He learns something from that year about himself, the challenges that he has to take on, noting his own failings.
Perhaps also the start of a bit of a commentary on class,
Yes.
because Spud plays in that, where he's
Correct.
he's in a very wealthy school,
Correct.
but he came in as the bursary kid,
Correct.
and so he's maybe also embarrassed of his own
Correct.
standing against
his
these wealthy
parents-
boys.
his
So the sort of
parents-
opposite of Arthur.
Yes, yes. His parents are very much working class people and embarrassing. They're larger than life. They unapologetically drink and whatever. Whereas when you go to Michael House, you see these smart parents from Joburg and Durban and the Midlands. Everything is so dignified. They're very dignified.
You'd love to hear this. I don't think it was Michael House, but it was something along those lines. The sort of wealthy South African school. Someone, and I don't even know how I heard this. It's such a dinner party fact, but someone involved in car rentals was saying that for a lot of these like weekend get-togethers where they all have to go for a parents' evening or parents' weekend, that some of them rent fancy cars just for the weekend, just to go to those things, so that in the parking lot are these Porsche Cayennes or whatever.
Yes.
Don't you think that's interesting?
It's very
that
interesting.
A lot of those cars are rented.
I know. And also, I go to the... and I
Funny,
believe that.
Wealth. If someone says, what's the most fascinating thing for me? To me, it's just this idea of wealth.
Yeah.
Everything about it. Not that I want it, but just what is wealth? What is true wealth?
Everybody is affected by it, right?
That's why I'm curious about what it means to be a bestseller in South Africa. What was that R6 a book?
Yeah. Look. There was if you around 2010, 2011, I was doing very well. No doubt about it. But I guess for me, the greatest thrill about my career is the fact that I have, and all the bestsellers and things like that, is that I've been able to live a purely creative career without funding.
Yeah.
And I'm now deep into my 40s, and I've never had a proper job. And ever, and it's quite amazing that I've so that is actually the greater thrill than how much money I've got in my bank account.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? It's like for South Africa. I mean, there's probably Dion Meyer who can live off his writing, and film rights and stuff like that. Selling also bilingual, but outside of that,
there's not many.
Everybody else has got a job. They'll have a lecturing job. They'll have a teaching job.
Very similar to the music world.
Yeah,
very similar. And of course, Short Straw, we chose to be 5-piece. So I mean, that
then divides it.
When you're dividing it by 5, it just stops certain decisions. But I long since said, if maybe there was the 3 of us, and maybe we hadn't already had our own Bioscope sort of businesses created, maybe we would have said, okay, guys, we're off.
Yeah.
We're going to do this.
We're going to take this.
Sure. But it also
it's a hard road.
It's a horrible life in many ways. So maybe I got the best, which was that I still got to go on tour to Japan and have all these lovely things and play these lovely festivals.
I think you have got the best.
Still have my Bioscope and
also your call it your day job is a creative day job.
It's a lovely day job.
Exactly. Yeah. It's these guys who've got to go teach kids English, and then on the weekend that write their brilliant novels. It's hard that, I get every morning, I wake up at 7 o'clock, 7:30, and all I've got to do is hang out at home and write. And there's something quite nice about that.
Okay, so obviously you're in a little bit of a press tour at the moment, literally. But, I mean, what would be the next thing you would be sitting down to write?
Well, I've had, as I say, when I thought about this reunion, I did think about possibly 2 other ones to use the rise of I've already set it up in this first one of Ben Voss, who's called Glenn Fox, and Viper. And so I've set up the idea that they are building something, but it hasn't happened yet. So I would love to go back and write that era of my life where we went to Grahamstown. All happened very quickly, tsunami, those kind of things where I include that into that.
Tsunami. Jesus.
Yes, and I want to. That's why also I think now, without saying that that's what I'm going to do, because I still have to sign the deal, but the talks have started about potentially another Spud continuing on from that reunion, as it were, like the next year, if you like, 2004. There's still discussions about whether that would be the last Spud or whether there would be one more taking it to 2005, which is ideally what I'd do. But I think also, as I write this year, I'm going to see what's coming out and whether it's going to be because I don't want to extend for the sake of extending. But what I do believe is with this one, I think I've got much more to work with than I had for the reunion. So in many ways, I was always looking at this book as that's the one I really want to get my teeth into.
This next
Spud, because there's a lot going on there. And although, yes, it was lovely to have Spud at school and centered around there, I wanted to have this idea of him hitting the road and to get the sense of the other part of my life that is that I wanted to sort of mine, if you like. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go to those places. Let's just quickly stop off at the one we know the most, which is the high school time. So that was Michael House.
Yes.
Was there a high school film that hit you? We call this the high school crush, which is the film you sort of fall in love with in high school.
Basic Instinct.
Yeah, I was about to say it's usually that kind of movie that pushes your boundaries and exposes you to something a little bit often darker.
One movie I saw at Michael House, and it was soon after I arrived. I was young. I was still probably 13 or 14. Was The Mission, which blew my mind.
I've never seen it, but I know of it.
And that soundtrack
De Niro
and Jeremy Irons as two Jesuit priests in South America.
Okay.
And
it's quite a heavy film.
Quite heavy, and there's a part of me that loves, and I've realized when I start to reveal the films that I then, as my adults things, started to fall in love with. Not all of them, like some of them films I'd missed, and then I kind of, but I do like a bit of darkness and even a bit of horror. I like feeling disturbed. So some of my favorite films actually thoroughly disturb me.
Okay. What are some of those?
Mulholland Drive, Pulp Fiction, Apocalypse Now.
Okay.
Like those films still horrify me. You know, like I can watch it, but I can't stop watching them. Like I've watched all those films. Mulholland Drive was, David Lynch. He's just
and we all kind of
him.
Rewatched those kinds of
I
things.
know
in
now
some
that
way.
he's passed away, but it just nobody told stories like Tarantino or David Lynch. In a way that they worked. It was even Spielberg. It was more connected to the canon of filmmaking. Traditional filmmaking.
Yeah,
even though you'd go out there,
it was pretty and all.
Yes,
but Tarantino. I mean, like. Often the Bioscope gets asked to sort of curate something, or we've got to do an outdoor screening, and sort of people think to sort of the obvious cool, and then they go, okay, well, how about Pulp Fiction? And then there's a few times where I've said to someone like, have you seen it? I don't know. They sort of have to think about it. It's like, do you remember it? I mean, there's like a gimp in the basement, and there's sodomy,
there's sodomy, and there's
rape,
rape,
and there's rape, and it's like, do you remember
all that, or are you just remembering the chat about burgers in the car, which is very funny and kind of like groovy? But it is
dark.
It is, but you see, it's a kind of film where you can almost forget about the darkness because on YouTube you can just watch your favorite clips that are often like the funny shooter out bits or whatever, and then when you watch it as a sort of 3-hour thing, you're like, God, this goes into dark territory.
But it sounds like high school went into dark territory.
Yeah.
So it was a darker.
Yeah. Particularly initially, and that guy who was a base pike on was a malicious, evil piece of work, and you won't find a Michael House guy today who goes, nah, he was lacquer, he just was misunderstood. He was a vile, evil character. Like I saw evil for the first time at that school, but it was a dysfunctional evil. There were a lot of kids. Maybe from Joburg too, from broken homes, just folks had got divorced,
undiagnosed, and probably had something,
and so there was an entitlement, a sort of like arrogance and an ego, but went with a sort of broken person for quite a few people. And so you'd have these guys who were just. So that guy who Pike, he pulled a knife on me. I eventually got. That kind of thing where a guy bullies you, and you eventually stand up for yourself and you snap. And I was a tiny little prepubescent chap, and he was this quite big, fat guy, and he pulled out a knife and sort of ran this knife across my throat like this.
Jesus Christ!
And then
in school,
down the side of my body in the dormitory, and then blood started coming out. Not there, thankfully, but here. And then he licked it off, and it was this like this. It was this weird. I suddenly found myself in this sort of like very dark, something that might have come from a Pulp Fiction or a
Jesus.
So there was that, but remember, this was the early 90s.
Sure.
South Africa was not it was apartheid still, and this hyper masculine model was the model. So at all costs, big, rough, tough, rugger bugger, and it's so different now. I mean, you go to my class now. They just the atmosphere is different.
Well, it's without opening this can of worms, because we certainly don't have to get into it. But people love to sort of criticize or have this criticism of being woke, and of course, let's just forget about that. Let's just rather focus on the fact that what all those things were intending to do was to take away the oaks with the knives at school. You know what I mean? It was to learn about your mental health. It was to understand that, to create safe space, to help those poor kids. I mean, imagine a poor kid going to Michael House, which is a boys' school, this macho manliness, but they in their body are not happy.
Yeah.
And they think, Jesus, what is wrong with me? Because I feel like I should be a woman. It's one person out of 1,000.
Yeah.
And you just need to create the language and the tools and the space to go, cool, bud, whatever you want to be, man. Like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to tease you, and I'm not going to take you to the brink of suicide. That's all. You just want to create that space.
That is it. But actually, by the end of high school, I've when you reach the top of the school and you've got the power, it's a lot nicer place. So you leave feeling like, oh, that was pretty cool.
But you forget the trauma.
You've forgotten the trauma of what you had to go through. And so it's this funny selective memory thing that goes on. Yeah. But also, if I was honest, if I had to write Spud authentically, the initial schoolboy ones, like Spud 1, Spud would have been told he was a homo, a fag, or something, and I'm using 5-10 times a day, like I was.
Yeah.
And it's just used so casually. It was used so casually. It was just the way you're like, you inquire or this, or you acting, or kind of.
And you must be gay.
But it was never even connected, if you know what I mean. It'd just be like, Ruit, you homo, where you going? And it was just so lazy and so part of the apartheid vernacular. That's the way you had real men and you had homos, And so I must have been called that close to 10,000 times at school.
Yeah.
So it just eventually goes bang, 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 bang. It bounces off you. Yeah. But if I wrote that in Spud all the time, everyone come up and went, Spud, you homo, people would sort of, but that's what it was.
That's actually what it was.
It was so over the top in a way. So as you say, the woke thing had to happen to save us from that. It's not woke. It was just about caring for people and not.
It has an intention, which was to help
getting that Afrikaans apartheid hyper masculine thing to leave the door and to bring back somebody who can go. Everybody's worthy of respect and so forth. But unfortunately, now we've got a situation where there's a huge branch of people like Mr. Trump who feel that has gone way too far now, and it's gone into a sort of cult. And so now, how do you dial that back? Yeah. Do you start saying, well, it's okay to bring in a bit of lazy homophobia or lazy this? We need that to balance it up with a wokeness. And the unfortunate thing is woke, I think for many people on the right, they see it as anything caring they see as woke. And so we don't want to go back to that uncaring society of apartheid where it's us and them and and everybody's divided, and so it's a difficult one. But unfortunately, and I will say this, whenever a movement goes, it always goes too far.
Sure. Of course. And I think of the Fees Must Fall, which had lovely intentions every year to help these poor kids who can't afford their varsity. But, it would always involve one guy breaking into the Puma store in Braamfontein and then looting. It looks bad for everyone. Same with Black Lives Matter. Makes perfect sense, but there's always a handful of oaks that take it too far and ruin it for everyone.
And then ruin it, But
shame, we could go on hours
it's been
for that.
Fascinating, this chat. I'm really loving it. So thank you.
But in the era you're now mining, which is this do I go to my 10-year reunion 2004 era, you starting your career, you forming the troupe. What was a nice film that came to you then? Because we call this the It's Getting Serious film, which is similar to the kind of relationships you were having at that point, where
Yes.
perhaps you're moving in, or perhaps you sort of spending more time in each other's houses, or you're actually starting to find someone you could potentially marry.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say I really did enjoy the Richard Curtis love story movies, through that, going up to like Love Actually around. But I wouldn't say I love them, but I wouldn't necessarily say they spoke to me in that way. That's interesting. I'm trying to think what movie would have spoken to that. I don't know if I had one that spoke to that.
Interesting. I mean, give it a think as we
we'll
chat.
give it a think. Yeah.
While we are talking about you guys being stuck in a tsunami, tell that story.
So Ben and I, end of 2004, we'd been doing Mamba Green Mamba for 2 years.
Yeah.
And everywhere we went, people are going, hey, when are you bringing out new material? Because, and we kind of got an idea that we would be able to do this huge big lap of the country again with a new show because we'd built Trailblaze. So Ben and I spent a lot of time on the script. Like Green Mamba, we spent about 7-8 months on the script and only like 6 weeks rehearsing it. So it's so much happens in the script. We wanted to do. Ben had traveled in the 90s throughout Southeast Asia. When it was wild and, backpacking was backpacking. And he went to like Thailand, and it was just, there was, very, very small infrastructure. Some of these islands were just barely no tourists. And so he'd just done this whole...
Before the movie The Beach.
That's it. That's it. That was a movie that really inspired me around that time, because also my connection with Thailand through the tsunami, and then that's
such a beautiful intention, but then it just
goes
ruined
dark
those
again.
islands. And also, it also had a darkness.
I know, because we would go to that that bay, that beautiful bay where he discovers, and after that movie, and it was just a tourist mega. But we went there at 5 a.m. That's what we learnt, and we were the only people there, and so we got that experience. You've got to go early,
Cool.
But anyway, Benny and I, we spent 2 months, and Ben's a real drifter. Like, I'm much more of a homeboy and stuff.
Yeah.
Benny is always a drifter. Like he almost like didn't like being at home. Like he loved being on the road.
Yeah.
So he was like the wild man and the adventurer and the drifter. And so we just drifted around Thailand. Like we didn't make any bookings. We'd just check into a place, stay for
just holiday. Hey? Just
holiday. But then we would find this time to work on sketches. Okay. So we wrote about 5 or 6 sketches while we were over there. But it also was a holiday too, because I think we needed one. And but we were developing the sketches. And then on Boxing Day, we were down in the Andaman Sea, quite far south in Thailand, on an island called Koh Muk, M-U-K. And it was a very small island, but we had another island called Koh Kradan, which was just off the coast, due west.
Yeah.
And I remember we had quite a big party on Christmas. The next day was Boxing Day in the morning. About 10 o'clock, I was...
when it hit, hey?
Yeah, I was on the cafe. Like they have those little things on the beach where you sit and you eat and you have your coffee. Ben was in the loo having his morning ablutions.
Yeah.
And I just had this weird feeling of like the sea had pulled back. Like I looked out, and it was quite weird because when I sat down, I didn't necessarily remember... But when like a huge spring low tide kind of look... And people were like a long way out looking at rock pools. And I remember somebody said...
It goes out for a while, hey?
It does, yeah. It like sucks out for a while but rarely goes out. But you see those Thai places are quite deceptive because they're quite shallow anyway. So you can often walk out waist deep for like 500 meters out onto, through rocks and sand. And,
I remember Zanzibar also going
same
out
like
for
that.
kilometers. Yeah.
So I thought, well, maybe it was just a tidal thing. And then I was sipping my coffee, and we were a bit hungover, and I heard this like loud rumbling from the western horizon, and literally just like this. It was a mill pond, like you would know Zanzibar or any other place, and just this wave, just beautiful turquoise wave, just stood up like this, and just started to come like this, and then it broke, and it was probably about 10 feet high. Yeah. It broke a long way out, but boats were anchored, and just boats started doing flick flacks and just washed in stuff. So next minute, I'm holding onto the pole in the thing. I'm probably knee to waist deep in water. I've got my wallet in one hand. I'm holding the pole like this. Water, chairs flooding around me. it's surreal. It's surreal.
Crazy.
You don't just go, I'm running.
And also, where can you go? How big is this island?
The island is it's a fairly small island, but it has sort of like a tropical rainforest mountain top like this. So it goes like this and then up. So you can escape if you go up. But at that stage, you don't know it's a tsunami. You just think there's been a weird tidal wave or a surge, and it washed in people's boats. People in boats, like long-tail boats, washed like a kilometer inland, almost up to where it starts going up. People were screaming, pulling out the TV. Thais were shouting and Thai. They were trying to save things from and then somebody was on a phone screaming, Ko Pipi, Ko Pipi, Ko Pipi. The sister resort in Ko Pipi had just been destroyed. And so anyway, this was on its way. Obviously Ben comes running down and he's like, what the hell is going on? And we both look at each other and we go, the sketches! And he runs back to our thing to go find the laptop, right? Because we're about to lose our sketches. So Ben is running around with the laptop under his arm. Yeah. I'm looking around to see who I can pay for my coffee and breakfast. There's just no one. Everyone's just deserted.
At this point.
Yeah, but your brain is still not catching
funny,
it. So anyway, then this another one comes in.
Yeah.
But Ben and I are like total idiots, right? We're like sappers.
Yeah.
We the first wave pulled and then sucks back out to sea, and we go down to the beach then to watch. Now all the European tourists and that are being, shunted up into the mountain to safety, and kind of like there's a bit of a panic going on. No, we're sappers. We want to see what happens here and what. Yeah. So, but there are also Thai people there because like the locals are and then this another wave comes. This one not such a big one. This one more almost like a build of waves that creates a surge. But it comes up the beach all the way. We run up the beach like a kilometer to the top of this wave with wave chasing us. People are laughing. This guy got washed up and he was in a puddle and he's about a kilometer up the beach. Okay. And the wave goes back and he's stranded just in this puddle. And he's going, wow, 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 with this. And he's waiting for the third tsunami to come. How did he know there was going to be another one? Sure as eggs, the third wave comes in. Yeah. As it hits his puddle, he just goes, wah, and he roars right through the hotel, what was just sand, now over water, and gets his boat out to sea. And he's cheering, and we all cheering. We just didn't know it was a tsunami. Yeah. And then the horror started to set in. First of all, they plugged in the TV, and we realized, first of all, they said George Bush had dropped an atomic bomb on Banda Aceh. The rumors started flying. And then we saw how serious it was. Then we started going around the island and realized we were the only part of the island that wasn't destroyed because of this island off there that had blocked it, Kokra. And that was exactly behind that island was the line on Banda Aceh. So it came from there. But then it hit the mainland, and then the back of the island got the wave coming this way. Jeez. And just devastate. Now those were all.
So now how are you going to get home?
The island, the whole sea's closed. We were trapped there for 5 days. Also, 8 tourists died in the caves. They've got emerald caves there where you dive under and then go into the caves, right? Oh, Ben and I were meant to be there. We were meant to be there. We kept saying, we're going tomorrow, but we kept...
they were just visiting it when it happened.
They were on that morning thing, and they were in there as that wave came and just crushed them.
Have you seen those, like, the Thai cave... They made... the boys, the soccer team boys.
Yes.
They made a more authentic sort of limited series that's on Netflix.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that.
Sure. That's quite something. They've done Ron Howard did the movie, and there's been a few sort of more compact versions. But the version of them was done sort of by quite more authentic sort of Thai voices and characters. It was really good.
So they closed the sea, and then it became about trying to help people.
Yeah.
Like whether if a boat arrived with water, we'd be lugging, almost trying to be helpful, help people's houses who like they rebuild their their houses that have been washed away, carrying stuff, but there wasn't much else to do. And Ben and I didn't go sleep up there. We stayed at the bottom, but that night that we couldn't sleep because that sea was just
still bubbling,
bubbling and furious and angry. And then when we eventually, after about 4 or 5 days, we were allowed to go back to the mainland, probably 100 Ks. We've got to go back to the mainland through the sea now on a ferry. They came and picked us up on a boat. And we saw dead bodies floating everywhere, and just like on the way back. And when we got back to where we had left, the jetty and the port, it was all gone.
Yeah.
They took us to a completely different thing where there was just no. So everything, and then all these people flying in to come and find their dead parents, coming to find their 20, 21, 22-year-old missing kids. The airports are just scenes of grief and extreme grief, and it was honestly it changed my life. And it was the year before Spud came out, and I knew that it was going to get published, but I had no idea that it was going to be such a success. And I just said, if I get whatever opportunity I get in life, I want to spread the love. I want to make it count. I want to connect with people. I was just in a very moved state after that, and quite obsessed about the tsunami for many years after that.
Did you watch that the film, The Impossible?
Yes.
That's a young Tom Holland.
Yeah. Yes.
The little boy went on to be fucking Spider-Man.
I know.
You don't think about it.
No, you don't. But it is, and it was for Ben and I think quite a fundamental thing. And of course, when my book came out the next year, and I went on tour, and I started telling people about this that I was in there, and that I probably shouldn't be here. I should have. This should have been released. Post my death. Posthumously. So there was a sense that we got very lucky, and we were very fortunate, and we only realized after the fact, because we were actually being idiots. We were being like mad dogs, running around and having a jaw. We'd been on the road for a couple of, 6-7 weeks, and we were barefoot everywhere. So you just had that wild thing,
Yeah, very Lord of the Flies.
But it could have been a TS, exactly.
Oh, that's lovely, man. What is something you've been enjoying recently? A film or a TV show that you've watched that perhaps because you visited our video store, you're returning? Remember when you had to borrow and return these video stores?
Yeah,
these
it's
tapes or
very true. You know
DVDs?
what happens with me now? I feel like I get left behind. Everybody else lives in the moment, but when I go and write a book, I finish writing at 6:30 at night. I don't then go read a book or watch a film or even series. It's like my brain's too gone to almost like. So then when I get out of it, now I'm like, oh geez, I've got to catch up on all the stuff that I've missed.
But listen, it could be late. What's something that's come to you recently that you've enjoyed?
I've really let me just think what I've recently enjoyed over this last sort of few months. I haven't watched a lot of TV and film lately, just this holiday. I don't think I've been to the cinema for a while. But I'm not a big person who's just going to sit on. But I'm going to think about that too. There would have been something that's just hit me.
Are you a Bob Dylan fan?
Oh yes, I would love to see that.
I've
heard that Timothy Chalamet's performance is just incredible.
It's really good. No, you get a bit lost in it, and the film's not afraid to point him out as being a bit of an arsehole, and it also demystifies a lot of Bob Dylan. So
I've always thought he's a bit of an arsehole, Bob Dylan. I mean, I've loved his music, and he's a genius, but there's something like a discontent about him.
But it also deconstructs that genius, which I think you'd appreciate.
Yeah.
Going to what we said earlier, which is that to write, to really create your best work takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of practice.
Yeah.
The more fitter and warmed up your muscles are, the more likely that great joke sort of comes down from the universe. You're so right. You hear Chris Martin from Coldplay just saying, "I don't know where songs come from; they just come, and they come down from the sky, and I channel them and I play them." But you got to be very warmed up and exercised to open that passage.
You're absolutely right. It's like, also I find that when I write, it's like when you're deep into the process, that's when the diamonds come out, because you are in that groove and you've got mastery. See, the thing is mastery. What you're always striving for, I think, in anything, and I imagine it's the same with music, films, anything, is mastery, total mastery over that world. And that includes the language you use, the characters you use. Nothing feels like it's out of your control, but it must never feel like you're over-controlling it. You know what I mean? But it is that sense, you're absolutely right. It's like it's like an athlete. You've got to be primed to produce that that 100-meter sprint or that
No,
high
listen,
jump.
the God-given talent is certainly a part of it. There's no question.
You would know that too with your music too. Like you need that talent. I couldn't do what you do. You know.
No, but in a way, like I think you understand the process as one can, and you channel that. And so I think A Complete Unknown is a lovely film. I can rent you today. Because it shows a little bit of that craft. It still gives you enough of you're a genius.
Yeah.
Which biopics tend to always do.
Yes.
But it at least breaks it down a little bit so that you see that quite a lot of what we know of Bob Dylan was very much fabricated.
Yes.
And very much a character that he created.
Yes.
And
he needed to protect himself from all that mega hype. I mean,
I think so. And also sort of struggled with it. I mean, the Robbie Williams film is also a great story for you to see.
Yes.
Better Man.
Yes.
Where he's very vulnerable and really shows you who he is as a person.
Right.
And puts it very clear right from the beginning. He says, I've been called, a big royal wanker. Here's my story. And you see his coming of age, and you see him grappling with it. So perhaps those two are
all
are
right.
good
Well,
ones
thank
for
you very much. I'm going to take you up on those.
But listen, thank you for your time. We can chat forever, but I don't want to keep you for much longer. I've given you A Complete Unknown and Better Man, which are two nice musical
and
biopics.
also I like both their music in a way.
Yeah.
So that'll help, you know.
Totally.
Yeah.
What's on the cards for the rest of your trip? You're going back to Durban soon?
Yeah, so look, my publicity this year is just going to carry on and carry on. This is ostensibly a schools tour, so I've got like 5 more schools to do this week.
Oh yeah, I saw you at the Ridge the other day.
I'm going to Kingsmead, St John's, Beaulieu, St Peter's, and primarily because I couldn't fit them in last year for my tour, November, December. It was mainly just bookstores and stuff. And then I'm doing 5 or 6 book festivals this year.
Oh, cool.
So that keeps me busy all the way to September. And then I've got Natal schools. So like I'm doing lots.
Smart to do it in schools. It makes sense. Obviously, thematically, it's all about school, but
well, my publishers don't have to worry. They just send me there, and I have to do the work. So it's kind of
but it's a nice approach as opposed to just playing in the adult spaces, which is the bookstore.
Yes, and look, I've always felt that connection has been good for me. That it's developed a younger following, and you keep reinforcing that young following. I mean, I know Spud does that for me because every year there's another round of 13-year-olds or 14-year-olds or 12-year-olds that discover Spud and then read it and then get the book and join the sort of how do we say, the base of people who've read it or know the movies or whatever. But certainly I think final point also, because we've talked a lot about different genres, but to put a final point on it, the movie of Spud did so much to reach people who didn't read the book, like youngsters and people who aren't readers, and that was incredible to me because it didn't necessarily boost the book sales. You didn't suddenly have this. I mean, there was a little bit of a boost, but it wasn't like suddenly the books went crazy. But it was a sense of, in a room, you could now have most of the people knowing about Spud, whereas before maybe a third to a half would know about Spud. So quite incredible the power of film, because there's a sense that film has become a bit niche now, in this modern world. I don't know if you would agree.
Somewhat, no, and certainly the world of the cinema is not our sort of most popular Friday night choice.
And I remember Ross Garland showing me. I mean, you must cut me off when you've had enough. But
no,
Ross Garland showing me in 20 when we had made the third Spud film, and he had the forward for the next 5 years what was going to be coming out, basically from all the studios and stuff.
I'm privy to that list. I see it. I mean,
you see it.
2027. There's this.
You know exactly what I'm talking
Warner
about.
Warner Brothers film. They've sort of put the flags in the.
They put the flags in, and I could not believe it. There was not a flag that wasn't a superhero movie. There was not even like a Spud or any just people acting as people. It's suddenly, and Ross said, "You watch. This is a huge shift and going on."
Yeah,
and I'm almost getting a sense are we getting to the end of the superhero?
I think so. It culminated in what was arguably the biggest film ever made, which were those Avengers sort of Infinity Wars. I mean, those certainly rivaled the Avatars to sort of be the most successful blockbusters. And then thereafter, I think a lot of people are like, whew.
Another Spider-Man,
enough.
another Superman.
I mean, Jesus, how many times are you going to take over the world and get foiled?
That's it. And then you would see, then they would start to mess around. Spider-Man versus Superman, Thor versus, you know. So it's almost like, you know.
And I also think even for myself, there was a point where I was like, okay, I'm here for it because we're building up to this thing. I'm not that much of a comic book person. I'm now in my 30s, but I'm here for this moment.
Yeah.
Then when we hit the crescendo of that moment, I was then like, okay, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
need to watch
And
the next one.
You know, I found the soundtrack. I don't know how you find the soundtrack to those movies are very, very similar. It's all
Sure. It's the junk. Yeah, sure. No, it's an assault on your senses.
and but it's all the same assault every time. You know,
Yeah,
it's not
good
like you're going to get a different audio experience going to watch a Superman versus Spider-Man. You're going to get that same kind of buildings falling down. So
Yeah,
I
sure.
guess in a way it's the childification, if we can use that thing, of so many adults now are like, oh, I'm big, love my superheroes. And it's like, dude, I don't think you should be still proudly saying you're into superheroes. But oaks are, you know?
like a sort of 40-year-old guy with a Captain America shirt on.
That's a big bop, and he's kind of going off to watch with his kid. There's 90 going, and I suppose there's the sense that you don't want society to. It's fine to go and enjoy that, but even something like a James Bond, at least it's dealing with international espionage and
a bit more sophisticated.
A bit more sophisticated, yeah.
And I think we're going to get to the end of Mission Impossible now. This year, we'll see the last of the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible films. But it's considered the end.
Okay, but that's incredible that it's lasted that long.
And also, we kind of saw the end of James Bond, or a certain James Bond. We don't know what the future will be, and you're hearing all these mixed reports. But one of the last things I remember hearing was that it will be another reinvention, and it might be more in the spoofy, campier genre.
The Roger Moore-esque
which I think
stuff.
is maybe kind of interesting, because Daniel Craig was very serious.
And very serious, almost, I would say, devoid of any personality.
Yeah.
Almost like a bit of a hitman, you know, like he comes across
totally.
as a hitman, like a Russian hitman to me. And like, great, looks great and all the rest. But for me, I grew up with the Roger Moore Bond.
Which is kind of what Bond always was.
I know, cracking
Sort of
jokes, and the
little...
guy's just like died, and he like has some little like, you know, love. And obviously that carried on into your Die Hards, that same thing where, you know, Bruce would kill somebody and then, you know,
it's all a bit spoofy.
Spoofy. But it added a sort of like a playfulness to the violence that... Yeah, although I don't need that. I mean, Pulp Fiction is that thing where some, you know, and not just Pulp Fiction. Or if you think about Reservoir Dogs, geez, now that's one where, my wife with that cutting off the ear, she didn't like that. It like disturbed her for days, you know.
Lovely.
But I mean, it is. I do love the capacity and the power of film. I think it has a capacity to do what books can't do.
I'm so glad for you that Spud was that successful film, because you had the John Cleese, you had the good actor who we could see went on to be very successful. But you know, very few South African films are able to be those hits.
I know.
And Spud was one of them. A little bit like Material, sort of just
Material
did a lot. And you know, there's always been a few nuggets here and there that really have kind of become a bigger film. So
of course,
so lovely to see that it was that this big beloved film became a big beloved.
Correct.
I mean, this big beloved book became a big beloved film.
And also for films like Spud and Material, also to be able to be comedic and dramatic, but not have to be Schuster, which at that stage was obviously the big sell.
Of comedy.
Yeah, exactly. We're looking at the next level up, which is not just it's. Well, really, it's about character development, and you see that's the thing is to develop characters takes skill and to develop them through a story, so that they are all at a different stage at the end to the beginning. Now, Schuster's not going to worry about that. You know, there's no, but it's all in the gags, right? The gags. It's almost like, you know, you watch those visual gags where they have like, you know, funnies and it's almost like that, you know. But also that had its time. It's interesting with South Africa. Hey?
No,
we don't not loyal. I mean, you could say they're loyal to the Spud brand, but ultimately they're always looking for what's the next thing. And
Sure. No, but I mean, I think that's life. But
Maybe
but,
that's
yeah,
humanity.
But I just once again is just perpetuates the idea that South Africa, we need that humor and we need that way to make sense of it. I mean, you can bash Schuster, and you can maybe argue that some of the blackface stuff, is perhaps inappropriate now to some degree. But what it did do was just help us laugh at ourselves and each other.
Yeah.
And, those jokes, he was blackface, but he was very much in those moments often making fun of white people.
I guess, yes.
And he actually wasn't always,
No.
I'm not going to stand here and
Yes,
defend
yes,
him, but I'm
yes.
just saying that everyone was in the crosshairs, and I think everyone got equally sort of made fun of.
Yes, and he was popular across the board. It wasn't just one group. But ironically, Schuster is the first guy who phoned me about Spud the movie.
Okay.
And he's the reason I earned R1 million for the film, because he threw that number out. And then when I started talking to other people, I said, well, Schuster said he was talking about $1 million for me, and then that sort of just became the number that I would be paid.
So maybe let's close on that. So he phoned you out of the blue and just said, "What are you getting? You should be getting at least
No.
this."
He said to me, "I want to make this film."
Okay.
And he said, I want to make it, I want to play Spud's dad, because he saw himself as Spud's dad, but he wanted to turn it into a much more about Spud's dad and Spud, less school, and he hadn't quite worked out how he was going to deal with the crazy eight and school and all that section that where his dad's not there. But he loved the dad character, and I think he felt it had the funny bones, and he could. He then discussed what he would do, and he discussed what he would be sort of looking at, to pay me. And my eyes were like this on the phone, my Nokia, little Nokia. And
that at least gave you an idea of what we're talking
and
about.
And then Anand Singh got hold of me. So when Ross got hold of me and he heard that Anand Singh and Schuster, he moved. He wanted to, in a sense, he knew these other guys were circling, but Ross came in with a real vision. He had that vision of what the film turned out to. His vision when he took me out to do coffee the first time.
What's his surname again?
Garland.
Ross Garland. Because he directed it as well.
No, he didn't. Donovan Marsh directed it.
Oh, that's right.
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
Ross was just
produced
the
it.
producer. That's right.
And he's unfortunately now in Australia, and he's a litigator. But here he's starting to do a little bit of Aussie work. He's met some producer there and what have you. But that was a disappointment, because ultimately he was doing so well. I mean, he made Carmen and Kailicha. He made some good films. He won the Golden Bear at Berlin. For that,
This is Ross as a producer.
And so there was a real sense of he developed a relationship with New Metro at that stage, and what he wanted was a slate of movies.
Yeah,
And they then went on some digital program that they lost a lot of money, and they couldn't pay him for that slate. And I think that pushed him away, and he didn't want to go from one movie to the next and one to the next. It's a tough game, man.
Okay, he's now a litigator.
He's a litigator in Australia, but at least he's moved out of this big firm into his own thing. So he's now got a bit more control over his time. I did send him the reunion intent.
Just planting it out.
And then I did have somebody who had a knock about a TV series, potentially doing the Spud series as a TV series right from the beginning, 30 minutes sort of comedic.
But maybe there could be a second run of films with an adult cast.
Yes.
Spud, you sort
because
of
we wouldn't
yourself.
use Troy now. So you either would then bring in another, if you were going to do the reunion, you have to bring in another Spud with maybe the similar cast to before, and if you're going to do a TV series, it would start with the younger guys who would then probably go all the way through if they followed it through. But, that would be if I could get a series, I mean, that would set me up like 5 books would, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You asked earlier about the balance of, like if you're going to get paid in dollars and, you get paid for 5 or 6 series, 12, that would then set me up far beyond any of the books and rands and all that,
So lovely, man. But listen, congratulations
Thank
on it
you.
all. And I think every South African who loves, or actually anyone who's read the books is very appreciative of getting more. And it's lovely that a nice big swing as we said, became this bestseller
Yeah.
and has been great and celebrated. So thank you for just adding to that this fabric of South Africa. We've spoken about all these other people and these other films, but the Spud film and the Spud books certainly are a part of South Africa, and it's what a treat.
It's amazing. It
that you
is,
get
and it's
to
a thrill. And I think
have
one of the
brought
great
that.
thrills in my life, I think, more than any success. But thank you. And thank you very much for hosting me
No,
at this
of course.
beautiful bioscope. And also, the way our paths have crossed and your,
Yeah,
it
it was just lovely when I was, got the opportunity to chat to you. I immediately was like, I need to tell you about these funny
Sure.
little moments where
And-
I was the guy behind you.
Yes, and also you have a creative understanding, I suppose, a little bit like me, that goes beyond just one line, like music, your
Sure.
film, and theatre, and what
I love seeing the economy of it, and what
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the most out of being in a band. Of course, it's lovely to be on stage and just have
imagine. Rocking out.
these great moments, but just to understand the economics of it, and to be constantly, even with the bioscope, to be constantly underestimated and overestimated,
Yes.
and the answer is often somewhere in between.
And that's
where I'm not
that's
this
it.
crazy rock star, but
Yeah.
also I'm, I've been lucky enough to have had certain things
Yeah.
happen, and it's fascinating.
You probably find if you hadn't had all those things,
Yeah.
that you wouldn't be here. That's
Yeah.
like everything leads you on because of the knowledge you gain, and
Yeah.
But it's been really cool. Thank
Thanks,
you so
man.
much.
And all the best.
Thank you. You too.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. What a nice dude, eh?
He is such a nice dude.
Oh my God. Oh, it was such a privilege. I think really it's been one of the better joys of my life
Nice.
is having these chats with these people.
Yeah.
And I love our new format where it's not a guest episode every week. I enjoy the fact that more often than not, it's just us.
Yeah.
And what that's allowed us to do is really only pursue and do the guest chats that we want to do,
Yeah.
as opposed to having it be always, the format and
Yes.
what we have to do. And so we have to get a guest every week. And I think even if I was at a dinner party,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had this conversation.
Yes, because it's just one-on-one, It's just that.
And it's uninterrupted.
Yeah.
And I just think that it is just such a gift for myself. And
Yes.
so I hope other people appreciate the gift. But just, getting to that point of what his high school was really like.
Yeah, exactly.
And how there was this kind of darker
Yeah.
version of Spud
Yes.
that could have been written, or the movies could have been a lot darker,
Yeah.
is wild. But I think before we get into any other stuff,
Yes.
I would love to keep an eye out for any customers.
Yeah, sometimes we have to do our jobs.
Every now and again. I can see someone coming. Oh,
Right.
look, it's Gavin Pincus.
Oh,
Okay, let's see what he is returning.
Hey there, it's Gav here. I had just returned True Romance by recommendation of the video store, and holy hell, instant beep classic. What a movie, dudes. I suggest everyone watch this, especially on Valentine's Day. My wife and I have been doing it for 14 years in a row. We get cheap Chinese food, we drink some champagne, and we watch this movie because it's so, so good. It's got a crazy good cast. It's Tarantino's original screenplay. So much violence, so much drugs, so many drugs, and a hell of a lot of romance. It's so rad. Go ahead and watch it.
Oh, there we go. I love it.
appropriate.
Yeah, the bioscope and Gavin seem to have the exact same tradition. It just shows you how classic this movie is.
Right.
Made in the mid-90s. This was written by Tarantino.
Yep.
It was directed by Tony Scott.
Yep.
It stars a very handsome Christian Slater
Yes.
and Patricia Arquette. It's got a young Brad Pitt. It's got a very manky Gary Oldman. And we take great joy in screening it at the bioscope every year because it perfectly epitomizes the bioscope, which is
Yes.
it's got to be good,
Yeah.
but it's not typical.
Exactly.
And so we even say in our description, we say, this is not a Hugh Grant movie. There is not a girl standing in front of a boy asking him to love her. there is a suitcase of cocaine and everybody dies. So we always hope that every year there will be a couple where like the one person who put it together goes, babe, like what the fuck are we watching? So we enjoy that. So thanks, Gav. He did come and watch it one year at the Bioscope.
Nice.
And just, here's hoping he keeps that tradition alive.
Yeah.
Let us know what you guys watched this Valentine's to
Yes.
celebrate Valentine's. We'd love to hear what you are returning. You can always just send it as a message in the Instagram comments below, or you can send us a DM. You can voice note us over Instagram, or you can send us an email,
Yes.
which is videostorepod@gmail.com, and you can send
Yep.
an audio clip of you returning something.
Yeah.
Lovely. But another thing I love is that he touches on the point that the superhero movies are about to kind of take over
Yeah.
the world, and they sure as fuck did.
Yep. You're absolutely right.
And we were all there. I think I even said it at the point in the chat. We were all there for the first 20 that resulted in these like epic climaxes.
yeah, exactly.
And it's kind of difficult to approach them again.
Yeah.
And I also think that after the big Infinity War films, you then had quite naturally a Deadpool and Wolverine
Yeah.
come in that kind of shat all over the seriousness of Marvel.
Yes.
Which was kind of the only way to do it, I think.
Yeah.
So myself and Graham
Yep.
and Gad joined.
Yes.
We went to go watch Captain America: Brave New World.
Brave New Bird.
Bird.
Yes.
Last week, it is now in cinemas.
Yes. Came out on Friday.
Came out on Friday, and it's just another fucking superhero movie.
I don't even think it's another superhero movie. I think it's worse than most other superhero movies.
I agree.
Whoa.
No, and we just sort of left that going like, fuck me.
Like, I know we don't like to generally spend time kind of dumping on things we don't like.
Yeah, that's generally the approach here at the video store, is to not labor on the negative.
Yeah, but
rather
like,
just don't
wow.
talk about it. But I guess it's one of those things where it's just, it shows you what time we're in.
Yeah.
For those who've seen it, a movie like The Fall Guy is very much about a movie about the making of a movie.
Yes.
And it's this kind of sci-fi epic that they're busy making.
Yes.
And it almost seems ridiculous and stupid, especially when you're behind the scenes and you
Yeah.
can see how silly these sci-fi or sort of superhero costumes are.
Yes.
And it's always a little bit of a joke when you see them acting seriously
Yeah.
in this kind of ridiculous costume and movie.
Yes.
And I think we're just at that point now where it's like, when you see that being done,
Yeah.
in Captain America: Brave New World, where
Yeah.
Oaks is seriously in these like stupid fucking outfits, flying around, making little quips.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my god, this is just so dumb.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's been proven, like we say in the other Marvel movies that we're all here for, are just as costumey and just as quippy and just as silly, but they made it work.
Yeah, and
This,
I think
like,
something
completely drops the ball.
like the Guardians of the Galaxy. I
Yeah.
mean, Chris Pratt's humor
Yes.
and just the jokes and the tone of that
Yeah.
drive it through.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
And maybe in those bigger Avengers films, the ensemble has jokes, and maybe the kind of Downey Jr.
Yeah.
character, the Tony Stark character, also kind of humbles
Yeah.
the sort of the idea.
Mm.
But here we have Captain America, which is now no longer Chris Evans.
Yes.
He has retired as Captain America, and he's given his shield over to the dude who was previously Falcon.
Yeah.
But also the other problem is we are now not just in movies. There's series that you have to
Yes.
watch
Yeah.
where you really have to know what the fuck's going on. And I haven't watched those series.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just feels like I'm sort of halfway through a dinner party where I've like missed the entree. So it wasn't great.
No, exactly. And it's not bad because of they've changed Captain America. Anthony Mackie isn't the problem here.
Yes.
Like, he's good, he's charismatic and everything. It's just such a poorly written film. It is one of the worst scripts I've heard in a movie.
Yeah,
in
and
such
it was
a
just
long time. It also looks like a TV show, like not a very expensive TV show. It's not well shot. It's not like interestingly visual in any way.
because I feel like if you are making this television, which is typically now like incredible television. For the standard of television, we're now making the most incredible television. The question now begs, if you're going to make a movie to add to this universe, it better be a fucking huge epic movie.
Yes.
And this one kind of wasn't.
No. Or it needs to be like still interesting somewhere. Like one of the things that's really stacked against this is the first 3 Captain America movies are some of the like most beloved Marvel films.
Yes.
People really like those movies, so it has that kind of stacked against it. Plus the fact that for some insane reason they basically decide to make this a sequel to The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
Like it directly follows like events and characters from The Incredible Hulk, which is a movie no one likes and everyone has forgotten about.
Which Hulk is that?
The Edward Norton one.
Oh, yeah.
Which is technically like an MCU movie.
Yeah.
Even though Edward Norton isn't playing the character anymore, Hulk, spoilers, isn't even in this movie. And the actor who played Ross is dead.
Yeah.
And now he's been replaced by Harrison Ford. It's like, why even link it to this movie that everyone's forgotten about and bring back Tim Blake Nelson as a character that everyone forgot about?
Oh, was he in?
He's in that movie as the same character.
Oh, you see, I forgot that, and I even watched that movie. Oh well,
it's bizarre.
And
if they, I just have to say, if there is one positive takeaway from this movie, it's that if you're like some sort of creative artist person who's struggling with your creative output, just remember it took 5 screenwriters to write this thing. That should be encouraging.
Oh, and there's even
5 people wrote this garbage.
And there's even that point where, like, I think the tech guy says something, and then our superhero character goes like, "Speak English to me," or like something stupid like that.
It's staggering that it takes 5 people and like 3 story department people.
And then why was it even called Brave New World?
I don't know.
Because for those who are listening every week, I'm working my way through classic literature.
Yes.
And there is a famous book called Brave New World, which was written by Aldous Huxley.
Yes, that's right.
Which I have started at one point. I sort of was like, I'm not ready for it. I'm going to come back to it.
Yes.
But it's the more utopic look to the future, where everything's like perfect.
Okay.
As opposed to 1984, which was very like, you just feel like everything's fucked.
Yeah.
In the future. This was like perfect babies, perfect society. Everything's quite pristine.
Right.
I
know originally it was called New World Order. And then they changed it because New World Order is like a conspiracy theorist thing. So they were like, yeah, let's not associate ourselves with that.
Yeah. So I don't know why it's even called that name. And
They
also
needed a
like the
subtitle.
whole world wasn't at stake.
Yeah.
It was just like a fight against a dude's temper.
Yes.
And then they sort of got him to control it. And then they he kind of they actually didn't even kind of defeat him. He sort of surrendered himself.
Exactly.
So that's how the movie ends. Spoiler alert.
Spoilers for this movie you shouldn't watch.
Anyways. But I guess it's interesting to sort of have a guy like John put this film out like on the cusp of this time.
Right.
Us feel like we've kind of lived this time, and
Yes.
and it kind of feels like we're sort of at the end of it.
They put this book out.
Well, just like when Spud the movie came out, it was on the cusp of this.
I see what you're saying.
And when they were talking about more Spud movies,
Yeah.
the question was like, well, the landscape's about to change, and it
Yes.
sure as hell did.
Yeah, big time.
But now it's kind of changed back in a way where
Yeah,
I think we've lost the luster of these movies.
Yeah, they need to kind of reinvent themselves to stay relevant.
Or, which is a very bold and very difficult decision, which is to like stop.
Yeah, but I mean, as long as they keep making money, movie
they-
studios won't.
They won't necessarily do that.
They're still chasing that thing of, okay, we made the ones that made like $2 billion, so we're going to keep chasing that until we literally don't have a choice anymore.
Yeah.
I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it, Hollywood always learns the wrong lesson.
Sure. No, and the answer, I think, is in the Deadpool Wolverine. It's in the punk rock. It's in the sort of weird. It'll be in the bold, odd swings, which is very counterintuitive, because what made those superhero movies so good is that it appealed to everyone.
Yeah.
Little kids were able to watch it. It
Yes.
was, there was a big scandal in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 or 3 where one F word presented itself. Every other F word that's ever been said in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yes.
But before that, there was one that made its way in. So these, it was a very family-friendly affair.
Yeah.
But maybe the answer is in more daring, bold, weird, fucked up. That's the only place you can go because everything else feels very and done.
What if you go back and look at all of them across the board, what tends to happen is if you give good directors kind of reign to make a good movie, they'll make good movies.
Yeah.
Jon Favreau was given like a ton of freedom on the first Iron Man, and he made a great movie. He was then kind of like put in handcuffs for Iron Man 2, and Iron Man 2 sucks.
Yeah.
And you just see that happening over and over again. Same thing, I don't particularly like Joss Whedon, but the first Avengers, where he was given creative control, everyone likes it. The second Avengers that he made is nowhere near as well liked.
Yeah.
Because again, he kind of had he was under the studio boot at that point. Because they go, okay, now you need to like repeat what you did. It's not keep being inventive and like creative. It's like just repeat what you did before.
Interesting. Yeah.
But it also goes to show how much Marvel kind of have their hooks and stuff. I'm still looking forward to Thunderbolts. I think Thunderbolts looks rad.
Well, that might be different because you've got the sort of anti-hero, anti-characters that are going to poke fun at the idea of being a superhero.
Yeah.
This one was about as cookie cutter as it could be.
Yes.
He stood up straight and stared out into the distance and fucking, made a comment as he flew off.
Yeah.
It's like it was about as straight up as it could have been. So yeah, maybe we need more Thunderbolts.
Oh, let's hope.
So yeah, we'll see.
Let's hope. Marvel needs a hit.
They do.
Because there's an Avengers movie out in like a year.
Oh, really?
Or 2 years. I can't remember if it's 2025 or 2026.
Okay.
Either way, they're very close to another Avengers movie.
Okay.
So they need to build up excitement. Otherwise, no one's going to give a shit.
Yes. Thank you for a lovely day.
Yes.
Yeah. What a nice little chat.
Uh-huh.
It's nice to always catch up on this stuff.
Yep.
And as I said, this is the format.
Yeah, exactly.
We also talk about, weekly news and exciting stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be happening again next week Tuesday.
Yes, it will.
Our home base is thevideostore.co.za. We have other creatives. We haven't had too many writers.
Yes.
I think that just shows that John is quite a unique person in our society in that he is a writer.
There is another writer interview coming up though soon.
Oh yes,
for Mickey 17.
Correct. Oh, that's so exciting that you brought that up.
Yes.
Edward Ashton, the author of the book Mickey 7.
Yeah.
Which has become Mickey 17, and tickets are already on sale for that over at the bioscope.co.za. So I think it's about time we release that episode.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you
Nice.
so much, G-Force.
Not a problem.
All right. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.